get Barbara. Oh, there's Barbara. Do you want to lit now? Do you want to lit now? See it. Hope it's still cool. Yeah, they're just starting now to go in.
I noticed a bunch of people on the side.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Wonderful to see you. We also welcome quite a few people online, which is just great. And I'm just going to check in and make sure everything is working that way. With technology, you just almost have to expect something to go wrong. But we're all good. Welcome again to this church that was a special place for Margaret for over 60 years, where she communed with the sacred, felt part of something bigger than herself, took part in activities which fed her heart, and was a beloved member of other people's lives in community. I'd like to read our territorial acknowledgement. At the start of our service, we acknowledge we are on the homeland of the Ktunaxa and the Secwepemc people and the Métis who call this home. And just a little note about cell phones. I remember to turn mine off, and if that's something that you'd like to do, you can do that too. My name is Brent Woodard, and I serve as the current minister of this church. I never met Margaret in person, but I did talk with her on the phone a couple of times and quickly knew she was a thoughtful, kind, safe, and hospitable person. I am so pleased that Judith Hardcastle is here today. Judith was the minister for St.Andrew's Church, leaving about 12 years ago. Judith had a soulful relationship with everybody in this congregation, and certainly also with Margaret. I am so pleased that Judith could be here today and to share in this service. We have a few other people participating in the service this afternoon. I'm sure they feel a little nervous, but it is so meaningful to have their involvement, and may they know how much we appreciate and support them. I welcome too, again, those who are joining online, and even I'd like to say hi to those of you who in your own time are watching the recorded service. Everyone's presence is honoring of Margaret and is so supportive to her family and loved ones. When we lose someone, life changes and is never quite the same again. An era comes to an end. There is a big loss, and there are many small losses. Not being able to pick up the phone and say hello, not being able to get together and share moments of connection, affirmation, and enjoying each other, not being able to ask about a recipe or of something that went on in the past. There are many little losses. It is hard. I always like the line, when we lose someone with whom we are in a relationship and with whom who helps give us our place in the world. When we lose them, we lose our place in the world for a while. So there is loss and grief, no matter how old a person was, and we acknowledge grief and trust its wisdom. And there is so much to celebrate, isn't there? Margaret embodied spirit and life and wisdom and goodness into this world. There has been countless gifts given and received, moments of blessing where quality in the simplest things in life has been felt. In a few minutes, granddaughter Rebecca will read Psalm 23, which has the line, "My cup runneth over." It's a beautiful imagery. Indeed, our cups run over. There is a fullness and an abundance to life, and we have known it with Margaret Olson. Let us enjoy celebrating her today. And I'll just lead us in a moment of prayer, please. We take a moment to be still and to be present, to go within and ground ourselves in the peace and wellness and love that is at the core of our being. We are a part of something bigger than ourselves. In this greater more, we are all connected. We are held, we are guided, we are okay. May we know who we are in our essence as we are here and now, communing with you, O God, and remembering and giving thanks for Margaret. Thanks for our life that comes from you. Amen. Well, I asked some ladies when they came early, I said, are you good singers? Because you're singing in the good singing section. And every place in here is the good singing section. So we're going to sing Joyful, Joyful, We Adore You. Beautiful hymn, beautiful words. And you should be able to see the words projected up on the screen. So I invite you to stand as you would like to, and we'll sing Joyful, Joyful, We Adore You. Please have a seat, everyone. So meaningful to have you, Joyce, playing the music today. You and Margaret go back a long time. So we're going to have our readings at this time, and I'd like to ask Rebecca, who's Margaret's granddaughter, and Patricia, who's a niece, to join Judith, and maybe just all come up at the same time. And Rebecca, you're going to read first, please. Thanks.
Psalm 23, a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
First Corinthians 13, 1 through 13. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love.
I'm reading from Psalm 139, one of my favorite psalms. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hands upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there you shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not darkness to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. I know them very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them have yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. I try to count them. They are more than the sand. I come to an end. I am still with you.
So I just wanted to clarify, that was Margaret's great-granddaughter. And she was recorded. So she can play that back to her in a few years. Peter, you're a special person in the family, and thank you for coming and talking about Margaret today.
Hello, my name is Peter Tilt, and I've been given an honor of delivering a eulogy for an extraordinary person. I won't repeat details that have already been set out in her well-written obituary, other than to echo the fact that Margaret truly was, quote, the center of gravity for an extended family, and for many others whom she lovingly tucked under her maternal wing. I echo that because I was one of those many others who experienced and appreciated that maternal envelopment. I first met Margaret Rose Olson, née Robertson, but always Mrs. O to me, in the summer of 1969 when I hitchhiked to Golden to visit my university friend Martin. From the very beginning, I was struck by the way in which she seamlessly adjusted to a steady stream of dinner guests. Most were like me, friends of her children, or relatives passing through, or just strays picked up on the highway, and we were all equally treated. One look at the Olson House guest book, a real treasure which is now into multiple volumes, bears this out with signatures and appreciative comments from visitors and guests from around the world. Regardless of numbers and frequent last-minute arrivals, there was always enough food for everyone. And to this day, I really don't know how she, along with her strong, silent, and eternally supportive partner, Ray, managed to do it. Regardless of numbers, it always worked out. And I had never experienced generosity like that before. And her ability to put food in front of ravenous guests was truly worthy of a quartermaster on military campaign. However, even more than the dietary components, there was always a special sauce, which I came to realize was love. Mrs. O loved well. She loved her home, her family, her friends, her church, her community, and just about anybody else who came into her circle. She showed it in many ways through her hospitality, her dedicated community service, and genuine interest in others and their opinions. Her extended family was huge, and she demonstrated love every time she and Ray attended family events, far and wide, large and small. She demonstrated it by being present when needed and worrying about you when you're absent. She demonstrated it by learning all of your life events, your children's names and their activities, their children's names and activities, and so on. I was one of many who felt special in her presence, and over the years, my wife Jean and I have been included in numerous family gatherings and events. For both of us, Golden was and is a second home, and Mrs. O has truly been that home's center of gravity. I have 53 years of memories, but I'll only highlight a few. I remember that when, as a completely irreverent young man, I discovered that my girlfriend and future wife was a Christian, and religious practice at the time being pretty much outside my orbit, it was to Mrs. O that I went to advice. I thought then, as I do now, that she was the absolute epitome of Christian faith, and her daily example was an inspiration to Christians and non-Christians alike. I remember our dear mutual friend Jacques from Paris, who also came to consider the Olson home in Golden as his special place, and how after he died a tree was planted in the yard to honor him. I remember many years of regular phone conversations, which always started with a bright, "Hi, Pete," just about everyone else calls me Peter, and have always included reports on her family and required detailed updates on the state of mind. I remember her unfailingly positive attitude, her keen and inquiring mind and quick, earthy sense of humor, and I remember many times laughing uproariously, always around a dinner table somewhere, generally in Golden or possibly at the Johnson cabin. I remember her kindness and humility. I remember how she connected seamlessly with all generations, but particularly how she loved babies. I remember her quiet yet determined demeanor and the tenacious way that she held and sustained the connective strings to so many individuals. Unlike many of her generation, she also adapted to and effectively employed technology as letter writing and visitors' books were supplemented by Skype and email. I remember her fortitude and uncomplaining nature, even through the pain before and subsequent to the loss of her leg. However, these are just personal memories, so maybe I should turn the mic over to a much better spokesperson, Mrs. O herself. Ever thoughtful several years ago and clearly anticipating this day, she began to write her story to make it easier for friends and family to understand something of her life's highlights. Following in her own words are a few excerpts that to me reflect something of her formative circumstances and character. She writes, and I quote, "Maybe I'll write some of the funny things later that happened when I was a child. If I do it now, I'll be laughing so hard at myself I won't get anything written. So look forward to the next chapter." Or, "We got married on November 30th, 1946. It was a bitter cold night. We got married at 7:30 and went to Winnipeg to get our pictures taken. My flowers froze solid walking from the church to the car. I've forgotten what the temperature was, but it was below -40. Or, Lumbee was a small town. Ray had built a shack 12 by 14 foot in his neighbor's yard, and that was our home. It had a bed and an airtight heater. That was it. That was okay. We were happy. Before I was married, I bought a set of wherever pots, and 70 years later, I'm still cooking in them. We had no water and an outdoor toilet. Later on, Ray built a small room and we had a pump for water. In the spring of 1957, the company moved Ray to Golden. On the 1st of July weekend, he came home and took Bonnie and Martin back to Golden to stay with his mom and dad. I packed the house, and with Marilyn, Ken, and Carl, 2 months old, we drove to our new home in Golden, about 14 miles out of town. We had no water, no power, and Carl was a new baby on the bottle. I forget how I kept his formula from souring. The story goes on in detail about her life with Ray, her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, her many joys, sorrows, and travels, and concludes with the statement, "I started my story a few years ago, but this is it for now, unless I remember something when I'm lying awake in the night. I need something to record my thoughts in the wake hours of the night. There are lots of thoughts and awake hours. So long for now. Love to you all, Mum. Kisses and hugs." She goes on to add, commencing in capitals, "I am so blessed. I woke up. I have a cozy home to live in. I have clothes to wear. I have food on the table. I have a loving family that cares for me. I have a little white dog to keep me company. Life is good. I am blessed. I am thankful." In a world awash with anger and self-pity, Mrs. O stands out as someone with clear perspective and grace, dignity, and in abundance. Year in, year out, she's been a constant in all of our lives, and in her humble but significant way, the world is diminished by her passing. I know she would tell us all not to make a fuss about her, but rather carry on with her very best wishes. Mrs. O believes strongly in an afterlife, and it gives me comfort to think that if heaven exists, she is surely there. She lived a long, very long time, loved well, was loved by many, and by her own words, felt blessed. I don't think it gets much better than that. Thank you.
Can we just affirm what Peter has said? Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Heather, our niece, has put together a PowerPoint that we're going to watch at this time. And the song in the PowerPoint is Amazing Grace, that was sung by Sarah Johnston, who is in Ireland, and she's online right now watching too. So it's kind of a beautiful connection. So we'll watch the PowerPoint at this time.
I
I was asked to deliver a message today. So, once again, we find ourselves in the season of Lent, a time of pilgrimage when we symbolically journey with Jesus towards Good Friday and the cross. In Lent, we reflect deeply about our faith, our relationship with God, and anticipate Jesus' death and resurrection. We also anticipate our own death, the death of friends we love, and life beyond death. I want to reflect with you briefly today about our relationship with God, a God of love and compassion, and about suffering. In 2008, religious writer Karen Armstrong won the TED Prize for her wish to create a charter of compassion. It was created for the public everywhere, crafted by leading thinkers in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. In the fall of 2009, it was signed by 1,000 religious and secular leaders. I remember how excited I was to be among those who signed the Charter of Compassion. The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religions, ethical and spiritual traditions, and calls us always to treat others as we wish to be treated ourselves. It has become known as the Golden Rule. It's taught by Jesus as part of the Sermon on the Plain in Luke 6:31 and the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 7:12, where Jesus says that it sums up the law and prophets. Well, love and compassion are inexorably linked. Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures, to dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there, and to honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being, treating everybody without exception with absolute justice, equity, and respect. The burdens and wounded places of the human heart are not far away from any one of us. Underneath those smiles, all sorts of unresolved hurt manage to reside. We are all making our way across the river of suffering, and every soul benefits from being carried in the boat named love. In Entering the Healing Ground, author and soul activist Francis Weller offers a new vision of grief and sorrow. He reveals the hidden vitality in grief, uncovered when the heart welcomes the sorrows of our life and those of the world. We are ripened in time of loss, made more human by the rites of grief. Today, we have all come together to offer our comfort and support because we have lost someone we love dearly, Margaret. You know, whenever I go home to Windsor, Ontario to visit my sister Diane, we visit a cottonwood tree that stands tall and lean by Lake Erie. The tree has taught me something about responding to the unwanted losses that Weller describes in his book. Each time I visit the tree, I stand for quite a while looking at it. The tree I call my sentinel of strength. A long swath of stripped-off bark along one side of the trunk bears evidence of its having been struck by lightning. I often ask the tree, "How have you endured? What's your secret?" Each time I hear one word: resiliency. Each one of us contains that gift. Human beings not only have the power to survive and bounce back after inevitable loss, but they also are able to shape how they are to enter into the recovery from it. While the questions of why suffering happens and how God is involved elude satisfactory answers, we do have the assurance of God's compassionate presence being with us. One of the most tender descriptions comes from Henry Nouwen, who says, "God's compassion is total, absolute, unconditional, without reservation. It is the compassion of the one who keeps going to the most forgotten corners of the world and who cannot rest as long as there are still human beings with tears in their eyes. Christians recognize this characteristic of divinity by the way in which Jesus entered into his suffering. Theologian Barbara Brown Taylor explains it this way: we need a God who knows about pain. But it's not all that popular idea, even among Christians. We prefer a God who prevents suffering, only it's not the God we've got. What the cross teaches us is that God's power is not the power to force human choices and end human pain. It is instead the power to pick up the shattered pieces and make something holy out of them, not from a distance, but right close up. The Gospels depict Jesus as being moved with compassion. When he comes in contact with people's suffering, he senses deeply what it must be like for them to be hungry, harassed, dejected, blind, paralyzed, grieving, or continually ill. An example is when Jesus' friend Lazarus, the brother of Martha and Mary, had died. We read in John 11:33, when Jesus saw Mary weeping, and the Jews who came with her were also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. As Henry Nouwen writes, it was so like Jesus to be lost with the lost, hungry with the hungry, and sick with the sick. And have you noticed how often the word love appears in the Gospels? Earlier we heard Patricia read to us the well-known passage about the gift of love from Paul's letter to the Corinthians. We often read it out of context at weddings or memorial services because his sentiment is so beautiful and so true. Originally, St. Paul wrote it to the church community in Corinth because they were behaving so badly, sniping at each other over matters of faith. Jesus spends a lot of time talking about love in the Gospels. In fact, love and compassion are the heart of Christianity. In the Gospel of Mark, one of the scribes heard Jesus answer the question, which commandment is the first of all? Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. As we just heard, Margaret was a master at loving her neighbor. She lived her life with humor, with wisdom, resiliency, generosity, and kindness. She also bore many losses in her 98 and a half years, but like my cottonwood tree, she was resilient. She endured because of the love and compassion she so freely gave, and the love and compassion she received, not only from God, but from everyone here. Soon it will be Easter Sunday, the time when Christians all over the world will celebrate Jesus' resurrection. Now, whether you believe in a physical resurrection or a metaphorical one, it doesn't really matter. The mystery of Easter assures us that life after death, we will be held forever in God's steadfast love. Margaret has gone from our love into the arms of God's love. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Beautiful message, Judith. Thank you. When I was a student minister in 1983 in Minnedosa, Manitoba, my mentor and first minister I worked with gave me a service book of the United Church that has funeral services in it. And there's a prayer that's in the service book, and it's beautifully written. And I'm thinking Margaret probably heard the same prayer many times, saying goodbye to her friends and so on. So I'd like to lead us in a time of prayer using these words that Margaret probably heard. I've tweaked them a little bit, but please let me lead us in a moment of prayer. Oh God, we praise you for the great cloud of witnesses by whom we are surrounded. The everyday saints in every age who have loved you in life and continued faithful unto death. Your servants who have departed and are at rest with you. Especially do we bless you for Margaret Olson, whom we now remember before you. For all your loving kindness towards her throughout her earthly life and all you have accomplished through her, we give you thanks. We thank you for all your servants who have departed from this life and for your boundless and inclusive love for all people and all creation. O merciful God, the consolation of the sorrowful and the support of the weary, you are the nourishment that feeds our hungers and quenches our thirsts, so that we may know, regardless of whatever we face, we are enough and will be enough. Fill our hearts with your love, and may we be reminded that you bring life out of death and dawn after darkness. God, you know the way that we must go. Guide us on our journey and grant that we may trust your Spirit to comfort and guide us all our days. May we be enabled to run with perseverance the race that is set before us, and in your own time and in your own great mercy, may ourselves come to the realization of the life in all its fullness that you want us to experience, here on earth as well as after our bodies are no more. Support us all the days long, until the shadows lengthen and the evening comes and the busy world is hushed and the fever of life is over and our work is done. Then of your tender mercy, grant us a safe lodging and a holy rest and peace at the last. Through Jesus Christ, who has taught us to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. A beautiful hymn of faith and resurrection hymn is In the Bulb There Is a Flower. As we sing it, just enjoy the message and the words. They're so meaningful. Again, it'll be projected up here for us, and as you'd like to, I'd invite you to stand and we'll sing In the Bulb There Is a Flower.
Something
Beautiful hymn. Our service is almost over, and we're all invited to go across the street just east of us to the restaurant Turning Point. May you sure feel encouraged and invited to come and enjoy food and fellowship with the family and each other. I wrote a benediction for the end of our service, but I'm reminded that today is St. Patrick's Day, and I'm thinking it's probably not insignificant that today is St. Patrick's Day, and as we're remembering Margaret, and have people from Ireland who are joining in. But I don't have an Irish blessing memorized. But I give a shout out to the Irish blessings. They're beautiful, and there's many of them. But I'd like to end with these words. At the core of life, life is good. Life is a blessing. Life manifests in beauty and diversity. Life overflows in abundance and ever newness. Life sustains in strength and guidance. Life never ends. We are all manifestations of life. Margaret was a manifestation of life. The source of life can be given a theological name, God. It is the source from which we come, to which we go, and in which we always are. To know who and what we are in the depths of our being, who we really are, is to be blessed. May we be blessed as we go from this service and this gathering of celebrating Margaret back into our lives. Thanks be to God. Amen. So, I think, Judith, you and I are going to lead the family down the aisle here. So, family, if you don't mind following us.